I'm Jonathan Ashong-Lamptey, and welcome to the latest episode of the Resource Groups podcast, where it's my job to explore, discuss and deconstruct ways to help the people within your workplace reach their potential and drive performance through inclusive practices. In simple terms, this means I'll be drawing from a variety of disciplines trying to connect the dots in terms of best practices, habits and other important pieces of information that you can apply in your organization. This is the third and final part of a three-part series exploring subtle forms of discrimination in the workplace. As mentioned in the previous episodes, there's a lot of evidence to show that discrimination of all kinds exists in organizations. But it's often hard to identify or intervene because overt forms of discrimination are less frequent in society, thanks to changing attitudes and improved legislation. However, many covert forms of discrimination still remain. Today, I'm going to be talking about a covert form of prejudice that you will have seen in the workplace. I'm talking about tokenism. In today's show, I discuss several things, including why tokenism is so common, why tokenism can undermine inclusion strategies, the reason why your employee resource group may be used as a token, and much, much more. If you're finding this for the first time, make sure you check out the show notes to get details of all the reports and all the resources that are discussed in the show by going to resourcegroups.com/podcasts. That's resourcegroups.com/podcasts. That's also where you can get in contact to make any suggestions for the show, recommendations for future episodes, or just to learn more about what we're doing. I look forward to hearing from you and hope you enjoy the show. This is the third and final part of a three-part series exploring subtle forms of discrimination in the workplace. In the first show, we looked at the normalizing gaze and how anything can be made to look ridiculous when you shine a particular light on it. This becomes a problem when people are expected to qualify or justify a particular behavior associated with their identity. In the second show, we looked at how compliments can be used to mask prejudice. For example, when you're singled out for being exceptional because your ethnic group is considered to be unexceptional. This reveals hidden prejudice against your identity group. In this show, we look at something that you probably see a lot of, but I want to explore in a way that perhaps you haven't before. I want to talk about tokenism. And when I say this, it's when your identity is welcome, but perhaps your professional competencies are not. A while ago, a friend of mine made an interesting observation. She attended an annual conference as part of her job and noticed a very small number of minority ethnic professionals. After the conference, she always receives an email with pictures of the key speakers and the key award winners. The reason for this is interesting because the pictures always show these minority ethnic professionals as if they were key figures at the event, and it even gives the impression that the conference was more diverse than it actually was. Professors Koen van Leer and Professor Maddie Janssens found that a subtle form of discrimination occurred when the ethnic background of minority ethnic professionals was recognized, but their professional competencies were not. These experiences reduce individuals to their ethnic identity because only their visible, diverse presence is valued. This was the case with my friend's conference. I've heard of examples where an individual is invited to participate in a special event or initiative when they may not hold the necessary expertise. These tend to be high-profile events, and their involvement serves to increase the credibility of the initiative by portraying a culture that embraces diversity and inclusion. The need for such practices suggests the opposite, and it actually undermines inclusive strategies. Getting back to the research, in their study, the researchers described the experiences of a minority ethnic professional who was having difficulty getting recognized for his competencies. When his organization held a reception to sign a diversity charter, he was suddenly acknowledged and invited. He became visible. It was said that he was invited to meetings because his presence made these gatherings feel, quote, less white. This also works both ways for qualified people who have the expertise and are ignored. Sometimes it means that the person is given too much help. In these scenarios, their training and competencies are disregarded and unnecessary support is provided because of prejudice about their identity rather than their professional competencies. This legitimizes the ethnicity of the individual, but delegitimizes their professional competencies. As you may have guessed, this doesn't just apply to ethnicity. I often find that this is frequently used as an argument against quotas. In 2003, Norway introduced a quota law to tackle gender inequality at board level within large organizations. Firms were required to have at least 40% men and 40% women on their boards. This stimulated considerable interest and concern across Europe, including the UK. Critics say that it reduces individuals to their gender and ignores their experience and qualifications. The fear in this case is that women who lack the relevant experience will replace capable men. By legitimizing professionals based on their identity, it may change behavior, but it won't change attitudes. However, without policies that seek to intervene where disadvantage based on identity exists, very little will change in the future. So what does this mean for your employee resource groups? Well, employee resource groups have the potential to be misused for the purposes of tokenism. In the UK, a staggering number of organizations have started employee resource groups, and my opinion is that many of them have started them because it just appears to be the right thing to do. Organizations can start to claim that they're inclusive because their website shows employee resource groups, or they wheel them out during International Women's Day or Inclusion Week or whatever diversity and inclusion related activity requires it. Under these circumstances, the abilities of these individuals is not welcome. It's their identity that is favored, and this can be a problem. That's one of the many reasons why having an effective employee resource group really matters. Resource groups should be aware that they may be used as tokens, especially if they're perceived to be ineffective. So let's wrap this up. What are the key messages here? 1. Tokenism reveals prejudice. 2. Be careful when your identity becomes more important than your ability. And 3. Employee resource groups can be used as tokens by lazy organizations. So have you ever been included in an event as a form of tokenism? Have you ever received benefits because of your identity? Get in touch or leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. To learn more about my work and the resources discussed in the show, check out the show notes by going to resourcegroups.com/podcasts. That's resourcegroups.com/podcasts. If you're finding this for the first time, hit subscribe to make sure you get all the latest updates and access to other episodes of the show. If you've learned something from today's show, please share it with one other person that you think may find it interesting. If you really like the show, please leave us a 5-star review. With your support, we can really take this show to the next level. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.